proposal was this phasing plan, which we proposed to get the music venue going right away to start generating this revenue for the island. And then it was important to address the reefs so it doesn't, be put on the back burner. We really felt that it was important to start that construction so the edge can start to soften and grow over time. And if that can just start happening, then that would be a benefit, use the benefit of time. And then we would back out from the island doing the southern part last as number 3, and then that was our phasing plan. And that didn't happen. What happened was, the framework plan was published, and the Park District started, shopping it around and looking for partnerships. So the idea was to develop a public-private partnerships, get the different museums on the museum campus involved to, recognize this as their backyard. The field could do different natural world programs out there. The shed could have their own programs happening. So that's happening. Still, we're still looking for all the different funding pieces. But what did happen was the Army Corps came to us and they received, I think, $5 million grant from. It was money that hadn't been used in the Great Lake Restoration Initiative. And so they knew about the framework plan and saw that it could closely align as a project from the Gliffer Fund, from the Great Lakes Fisheries and Ecosystem Restoration Project. They saw the southern 40 acres of the island where we have the wetland and the woodland, that really met the qualifications of a Gliffer grant. And that's, so what the money will go to, it's a matching grant where the city will match 35% of it. And that goes to habitat restoration, or in this case, it's almost creation because this is not a natural area, but it's really developing those habitats. And then the grant won't pay for, bird blinds or the active learning parts, but the Park District is dedicated to that layer of it. And so this is the plan, which I don't know if anyone went to the public meeting when it was first announced, but it features a wetland that is now connected to the Great Lakes, to Lake Michigan. And then the woodland, this was the orange is woodland, blue is prairie habitat. So it's so we're now connected to Lake Michigan, and this wetland will rise and fall with the levels of the Great Lakes. The Army Corps had done projects like this in the past and had much more success maintaining this type of wetland. We just worked with them to make sure it was deep enough so you don't go out there and see a dried up pond. So they worked with us on that closely and took our recommendation and the Park District's recommendation. And so this is the grading plan for the southern 40 acres. So it goes right up to the terminal building in the middle of the island. Actually, this part will be next, but it kind of stops right here. And so it's pretty wild to see a grading plan like this. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, but we worked very closely with the Army Corps to develop this plan, and they were good sports about it, as we were saying that, explaining our concept of the, crenulated edge, how that really expands and maximizes the habitats. And so they worked with us and said as long as we drew the CAD drawing, and there was a number of back and forths where they were balancing the site and making sure everything drained and could be maintained. And so that was a pretty interesting plan and experience to go out there. And so right now it's the southern 40 acres are under construction. The island should reopen in the spring. I have some shots from a plane next. But I wanted to share one experience we had on site. The island has a really long history, as Deb described, and you can't just think, there's nothing under here. It's history to me. What we did when we found in developing the framework plan and the Army Corps' plan, which used the framework plan as its guide, we found this plan that describes this is the first fill event where the island was filled in 1931, and during that time the fill material is really not well documented and probably anything goes type fill. In 1947, when they completed the plan so they could run the runway out there, they dredged sand from Lake Michigan, so we knew it was cleaner fill and more reliable, and so that's where we decided to locate the wetland, which we were going to dig down into. We wanted to avoid, digging down and finding who knows what, but we did find something. We found this red line is, based on this plan, the division between fill number 2 and fill number 4, so it was originally at the edge of the island, and that edge was created by timbers, a timber revetment. And so when the Army Corps has been digging, here's an overlay on our wetland. They found that timber revetment. These are pictures of it, and so they wanted to know what to do with it, and probably can't afford to remove it and don't have time to remove it, so the line of timbers will be visible at the island, and we're looking at it as a bird and fish habitat. What can it do for us? We'll probably break it up so water can flow between it. But that was a fun discovery, and just trying to make the most of it, and we're excited that it can reveal this layer of history that's been buried for a really long time. The timbers are not treated, and so that was the most, big consideration, because if they were treated timbers, but they're probably old growth wood that had been out in the water for years. So this is some aerial shots of the construction right at the very southern tip, so you can see that geometry is starting to be visible. When you're out there, it just feels like a big room. It doesn't feel, you can't sense all the changes in geometry, but it's really exciting. So we're excited to share that news with you. The music venue is also moving forward. I don't know if you've read in the news, but it's the Live Nation, the operators are experimenting with much larger shows, so that's going to be an interesting way, more revenue for the island, but it's definitely a challenge out there that I think they'll address over the next year. So they're having a few of these festival shows, which we really support, if it could be more like Ravinia or, something that's where you're outdoors and just enjoying the music. So one thing we'll work with is circulation. When you have 30,000 people here and they're all exiting through Solidarity Drive, that bottleneck just becomes a much bigger deal. So maybe that will start to mean we look at the bridge again. That was not recognized as needed, but maybe it is now. And so what we found is as these different parts of the island start falling into place, it just generates more need for the harbor walk, for the bridge, and hopefully for the reef. So that's kind of where we're at.
I just wanted to touch on, and one already we have touched on, and it is the latest award, but it has been recognized, I think, by two wonderful awards from the Illinois chapter of the ASLA President's Award, and, as mentioned, the Environmental Design Research Association Great Place Planning Award. That was one of 7 that was nationally awarded, so that was terrific. And of course, Jeannie has had her own wonderful MacArthur Prize award, and also had her building Inside Studio Gang solo show at the Art Institute of Chicago that ran in the latter part of 2012 through early 2013. So it's had a lot of great exposure and recognition, which we're tickled to death with. So with that, we're going to close with a video, which the booth will take care of here, and we can